Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center of the massive crystal chamber and tried not to show his nervousness. The Galactic Council meeting hall stretched out in all directions like a giant dome made of living glass. Thousands of alien beings filled the seats that curved up toward the ceiling. Some floated in the air, while others sat on strange chairs that moved by themselves. The air smelled like metal and flowers mixed together. Jake had been to many strange places in his 20 years as a starship captain, but nothing quite like this. His uniform felt too tight, and his boots made small clicking sounds on the crystal floor. Every sound seemed to echo forever in this place. He could feel thousands of eyes watching him, even though many of the creatures around him did not have eyes like humans did. The Vulcan High Chancellor rose from his seat at the center of the curved table. The creature stood nearly 3 meters, tall with 4 arms and a head that looked like a giant insect. Its compound eyes reflected the light from the crystal walls like tiny mirrors. When it spoke, its voice came from speakers built into the walls, because humans could not hear the clicking sounds it made naturally. Human Representative Jake Morrison, the Chancellor said in perfect English. You stand before this council to answer for the actions of your species. For 300 years, humans have spread across the outer regions of our galaxy. Your people have claimed worlds that others said could not be lived on. You have built colonies where other species have failed. You have changed the balance of power in ways that concern us. Jake nodded slowly. He had expected this. Earth's government had sent him here, knowing that this day would come. Humans had been too successful too quickly. Other species had noticed, and they were not happy about it. A new voice spoke from his left. Jake turned to see a creature that looked like a walking tree made of crystal. The Xanthari ambassador was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at directly. Light passed through its body and came out in rainbow colors. When it moved, it made sounds like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Your species takes worlds that we have marked as too dangerous for settlement, the Xanthari said. Desert planets, where the heat would kill most beings. Ice worlds where the cold freezes solid in minutes. Jungle worlds where the very air is poison. Yet humans build cities on these places and call them home. This disturbs the natural order we have maintained for thousands of years. A third voice joined the conversation. This one came from above, where a creature that looked like a giant jellyfish floated in a tank of water. The Mokari delegate spoke directly into Jake's mind using telepathy. The voice felt cold and slippery inside his thoughts. More troubling than where you live is how you think, the Mokari said, without moving what might have been its mouth. Your species feels emotions too strongly. You make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. You fight when you should negotiate. You explore when you should wait. You change things when you should leave them alone. This makes you unpredictable and dangerous. Jake listened to each accusation carefully. He had been briefed on what to expect, but hearing it directly from these ancient species felt different than reading reports back on Earth. These beings had ruled the galaxy for longer than humans had existed as a species. They had seen civilizations rise and fall. They had decided which species lived and which ones were contained or destroyed. The Chancellor spoke again. The Council has discussed the human problem for many cycles. Some members believe your species should be restricted to your current territories. Others think you should be guided more carefully in your expansion. A few suggest that stronger measures might be necessary. The words hung in the air like a threat. Jake knew what stronger measures meant. He had read the histories of species that had been deemed too dangerous to exist freely. Most of those species no longer existed at all. However, the Chancellor continued, we have decided to offer your species a chance to prove that you deserve continued freedom. We propose a series of trials. 5 tests that will show whether humans can be trusted with the power you have gained through your rapid expansion. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed 5 different worlds and 5 different alien species. Jake recognized some of them from his diplomatic training, but others were completely new to him. The first trial will test your diplomatic skills, the Chancellor explained. The Quatari have volunteered to challenge your ability to negotiate fairly and honestly. They are the finest diplomats in the galaxy and have never lost a negotiation. The display shifted to show the second challenge. The Nexari Collective will test your technological understanding. They achieved technological transcendence over 2,000 years ago. Your scientists will attempt to solve problems that have challenged species far older than humanity. The third image showed a massive creature covered in natural armor. The Kethmori will test your combat abilities. Their warriors have never been defeated in single combat. This trial will show whether human military thinking can match their ancient warrior traditions. The fourth test looked like a nightmare world of storms and predators. Finally, you will face a survival challenge on Death World Sigma 7. 12. Species have tried to establish colonies there. All have failed. If humans can survive where others cannot, it will prove your claims about adaptability. Jake studied each image carefully. The tests were designed to be nearly impossible. Each one played to the strengths of species that had mastered their particular area over thousands of years. Any reasonable person would see these challenges as a death sentence disguised as an opportunity. But Jake Morrison was not just any reasonable person. He was human. And humans had a reputation for doing unreasonable things and somehow making them work. I accept these trials on behalf of humanity, Jake said clearly. His voice carried to every corner of the massive chamber. When do we begin? The Chancellor's compound eyes seemed to glitter with something that might have been amusement. Immediately. Your species will have representatives for each trial. Success in all 5 tests will grant humanity full membership in this council. Failure will result in restrictions on your expansion and oversight of your colonies. Jake nodded. Again, he did not mention that he knew there was a third option the Chancellor had not stated. Complete failure might result in humanity facing the same fate as those other species who had been deemed too dangerous to exist. As the Great Chamber began to empty, Jake remained standing in the center of the crystal floor. He touched the small communication device hidden in his collar and sent a coded message back to Earth. The message was simple, but its meaning was clear to those who would receive it. The galaxy had just challenged humanity to prove they belonged among the stars. Now they would discover what humans were really capable when their survival depended on it. The greatest test in human history was about to begin. Ambassador Lisa Park walked through the corridors of Harmony Station and tried to calm her racing heart. The diplomatic hub floated in neutral space between 3 different star systems. Its white walls curved gently like the inside of a giant egg. Soft music played from hidden speakers, and the air smelled like vanilla and fresh rain. Everything about this place was designed to make visitors feel peaceful and ready to negotiate. Lisa had spent the last 2 weeks preparing for this moment. She carried no weapons and wore simple clothes that would not offend any known species. Her only tools were her mind and a small tablet containing information about the trade dispute she was supposed to resolve. According to the briefing materials, the problem seemed straightforward. 2 species both claimed mining rights to a system rich in rare crystals. Her job was to negotiate an agreement that both sides could accept. What the briefing materials did not mention was that this entire scenario had been designed to make her fail. The meeting room sat at the center of Harmony Station. When Lisa entered, she saw her opponent waiting at a curved table that seemed to be made from a single piece of white stone. Diplomat Prime Sylveth of the Quatari race stood nearly 2 meters tall with silver skin that seemed to glow with its own light. His large black eyes could see colors that humans could not even imagine and read, micro-expressions that most species did not even know they were making. "Ambassador Park," Sylvith said in a voice like musical instruments playing together. "I am honored to meet the representative of such a young and ambitious species. Please sit, and we shall begin this negotiation." Lisa took her seat across from the alien diplomat. She had studied everything humans knew about the Quitari during her journey to Harmony Station. They were master manipulators who could read emotions. Like humans read words on a page. They had been conducting galactic diplomacy since before humans learned to make fire. Every conversation was a game to them, and they had never lost. "I have reviewed the dispute materials," Sylvith continued. "The Helneri claim mining rights based on their ancient star charts. The Corvin insist their exploration grants take priority. Both species present valid arguments. This will require careful consideration of precedent and law." Lisa nodded and opened her tablet. The data inside showed surveys of the disputed system and legal documents from both species. Everything looked official and detailed. She spent several minutes reading through the information, while Sylvith watched her with those impossible black eyes. What Lisa saw in the data troubled her. The Helneri star charts were indeed ancient, but they showed the system containing different planets than current surveys indicated. The Corvin exploration grants were recent, but they referenced mineral deposits that did not exist according to the latest scans. Either both species were mistaken about basic facts, or someone had provided false information. "These documents contain errors," Lisa said quietly. "The Helneri charts show 6 planets, but current scans find only 4. The Corvin surveys mention uranium deposits, but the system contains no uranium at all." Sylvith's expression did not change, but Lisa caught a tiny flicker in his eyes. It lasted only a fraction of a second, but it told her everything she needed to know. The Qutari had created this scenario using false data. They expected her to negotiate based on information that was completely wrong. "Perhaps there are simply differences in measurement systems," Sylvith suggested smoothly. "Ancient charts often use different standards than modern ones. Survey equipment can produce varying results depending on the techniques used." Lisa closed her tablet and looked directly at the alien diplomat. "You are lying to me." The words fell into the peaceful room like stones dropped into still water. Sylvith's silver skin seemed to dim slightly, and his large eyes widened in what might have been surprise. "I beg your pardon," he said carefully. "You heard me correctly," Lisa replied. "This entire scenario is fabricated. The Helneri star charts were created last week using a historical writing style. The Corvin exploration grants reference technologies that were not invented until after their supposed expedition. Someone has constructed an elaborate fiction and presented it to me as fact." Sylvith was silent for a long moment. Lisa could see him processing this unexpected turn in the conversation. The Qutari were experts at reading other species, but they were not used to being read themselves. "Even if your accusations were true," Sylvith said finally, "the purpose of this exercise is to test your diplomatic abilities. The specific details of the dispute are less important than your approach to resolving it." Lisa leaned back in her chair. "That might be true if you were testing my ability to work with false information. But I think you are testing something else entirely. You want to see if you can manipulate me into accepting an agreement that favors the Galactic Council's position over humanity's interests." "What makes you think this negotiation involves humanity's interests?" Sylvith asked. Lisa pulled up a new file on her tablet. "Because the disputed system is located exactly 47 light years from the newest human colony in that region. The rare crystals mentioned in the false reports are the same materials humans use in our faster-than-light engines. If I negotiate an agreement that gives mining rights to either the Helneri or the Corvin, then humans will be cut off from resources we need for continued expansion. The Qatari diplomat stared at her with his impossible eyes. Lisa could see him trying to read her emotions and intentions. She knew he was looking for signs of anger or fear or deception. Instead, she gave him something that his species almost never encountered in diplomatic situations. She gave him complete honesty. "Here is what I propose," Lisa said. "Instead of negotiating a fake agreement about a fake dispute, I will tell you what humanity actually wants and what we are willing to offer in return." "This is highly irregular," Sylvith protested. "Maybe," Lisa agreed, "but it is also honest. Humans want to continue expanding and exploring. We want to build colonies on worlds that other species cannot use. We want to trade freely with anyone willing to trade with us. We want to learn about the galaxy and share what we learn with others." She leaned forward across the white stone table. "In return, we offer partnership instead of competition. We can colonize worlds that are too dangerous for other species and extract resources that others cannot reach. We can serve as intermediaries between species that do not trust each other. We can explore regions of space that others consider too risky." Sylvith was quiet for several minutes. Lisa could almost see him thinking through the implications of her words. The Qatari had expected to manipulate a young diplomat from a primitive species. Instead, they had encountered someone who refused to play their game entirely. "Your approach is unusual," Sylvith admitted. "Most species attempt to hide their true intentions during negotiations. You present yours as if they were items on a trade manifest." "Because that is exactly what they are," Lisa replied. "Humans are not subtle creatures. We want things and we are willing to work for them. We prefer direct communication over complex manipulation. It saves time and prevents misunderstandings." The alien diplomat touched a control on his side of the table. A holographic display showed the real disputed system with accurate information about its planets and resources. Lisa was not surprised to see that it was indeed located near human space and did contain materials useful for starship construction. "If we were to negotiate a genuine agreement," Sylvith said slowly, "what would humanity offer to the species already mining in that region?" Lisa smiled for the first time since entering the room. "We would offer to build mining stations that can operate in the asteroid fields where traditional miners cannot work safely. We would share the medical techniques that allow humans to survive in high radiation environments. We would provide escort services for cargo ships traveling through dangerous space. And in return, we want access to the markets on both sides of that trade route. We want the right to establish a refueling station in the system. We want to be included in future negotiations that affect that region of space." Sylvith studied the holographic display for a long time. When he finally looked back at Lisa, his expression had changed. The careful diplomatic mask had been replaced by something that looked almost like curiosity. "You have turned a test of diplomatic manipulation into a genuine trade negotiation," he observed. "Yes," Lisa agreed. "Is that a problem?" "On the contrary," Sylvith replied. "It is fascinating. My species has spent thousands of years perfecting the art of making others do what we want without them realizing it. You have accomplished the same goal by simply asking directly." The negotiation continued for 3 more hours. By the end, they had drafted an agreement that gave humans access to the disputed system, while providing genuine benefits to the existing miners. Lisa had not only passed the diplomatic test, but had created a framework that other species wanted to join Dot as she prepared to leave. Harmony Station Lisa received a message from the Galactic Council. The first trial had been completed successfully. But more interesting was the private note from Diplomat Prime Sylvith. He wanted to learn more about human negotiation techniques. Apparently, even master manipulators could appreciate the power of simple honesty. Dr. Alex Carter stepped off the transport shuttle and into a world that looked like something from a dream. The Nexari homeworld was covered in cities that grew like forests. Buildings stretched up toward the sky like massive trees with walls that pulsed gently as if they were alive. Streets curved and flowed like rivers between structures that seemed to breathe. The air tasted sweet and clean, with a hint of electricity that made his skin tingle. Alex had brought a team of 12 engineers and scientists with him. They carried simple tools and basic equipment in metal cases that looked primitive compared to the living technology surrounding them. Everything on this world was organic. The Nexari had learned to grow their machines instead of building them thousands of years ago. A guide met them at the landing platform. The Nexari looked like a tall human made of pale blue crystal with too many joints in their arms and legs. When they moved, they made soft chiming sounds like musical instruments. Their eyes glowed with soft light that changed color depending on their mood. "Welcome, human visitors," the guide said in a voice that sounded like wind through crystal caves. "I am called by the morning star. I will show you to the testing facility where you will attempt to solve our puzzles." The testing facility turned out to be a vast workshop filled with every kind of tool and material that Alex could imagine. There were metals and crystals and strange substances that he could not identify. Workbenches grew out of the floor like mushrooms, and tools hung from the ceiling on vines that moved when touched. Everything in the room seemed to be alive and waiting to be used. "The first challenge is simple," Called by the Morning Star explained. "You must create a device that can store and release energy efficiently. You have access to any materials in this workshop. You have 4 hours to complete the task." Alex gathered his team around one of the living workbenches. They had studied Nexari technology during the journey to this world, but seeing it in person was overwhelming. The aliens had learned to make machines that could repair themselves and grow new parts when needed. Their energy storage systems used living crystals that could hold power for centuries without losing charge. "They expect us to try copying their methods," said Dr. Karen White, the team's materials specialist. "But we do not understand their biology well enough to grow living crystals." "Then we do not try to copy them," Alex replied. "We solve the problem our way." The team spent the first hour examining the available materials. They found metals that conducted electricity better than anything. On Earth, they discovered crystals that could store massive amounts of energy in tiny spaces. They located substances that could change from solid to liquid to gas just by thinking about it. But instead of trying to use these amazing materials, Alex had his team gather simpler things: copper wire and iron rods and basic chemicals that worked according to laws of physics that humans understood completely. While the Nexari watched in confusion, the humans began building something that looked like a primitive battery. "What are you constructing?" Called by the Morning Star asked after 2 hours. "An energy storage device," Alex replied without looking up from his work. "But you are using such basic materials." "We have crystals that could store 1,000 times more power in a fraction of the space." Alex smiled as he connected another wire. "Your crystals are amazing. But what happens if they get sick, or if they decide to stop working, or if they end up somewhere that living crystals cannot survive?" The Nexari guide was quiet for a moment. Their eyes shifted from blue to purple, which Alex had learned meant they were thinking hard about something. "Living crystals do not get sick," they said finally. "Everything alive can get sick," replied Dr. White. "Everything alive can die. Everything alive needs the right conditions to survive." The humans finished their device with 30 minutes to spare. It looked like a metal box with wires sticking out of it. Compared to the elegant living machines around them, it seemed ugly and crude. But when Alex connected it to a power source, it charged quickly and held the energy without any loss. "Impressive," Called by the Morning Star admitted, "though inefficient compared to our crystal matrices." "Maybe," Alex agreed. But watch this. He picked up the metal box and dropped it on the floor. The box bounced once and kept working perfectly. Then he dunked it in a tank of water. Still worked. He heated it with a torch until the metal glowed. Red hot. When it cooled down, it worked exactly as before. Your living crystal would have died from any of those treatments, Alex pointed out. Our ugly metal box will keep working no matter what happens to it. The second challenge was more complex. The humans had to build a communication device that could send messages across space instantly. The Nexari had grown living antennas that could tap into quantum fields and transmit thoughts faster than light speeds. Again, Alex's team ignored the advanced materials and built something that looked simple and crude. They used metal rods and electronic components to create a brute force amplification system. Instead of elegant quantum manipulation, they built a device that could turn any large metal structure into a transmission array. This is not faster than light communication. Called by the Morning Star protested when they demonstrated the device. No, it is not, Alex agreed, but it works anywhere there is metal. It works with any power source. It works even if the person using it does not understand quantum physics. And if you build enough of them in a network, they can relay messages across a galaxy almost as fast as your quantum system. The final challenge required them to create a manufacturing system that could build complex devices automatically. The Nexari showed them gardens where machines grew like plants. Seeds planted in the ground would absorb minerals and energy and slowly develop into finished products over the course of weeks. The humans built an assembly line. It was not pretty, and it was not elegant. It used simple robotic arms and conveyor belts and computer programs that followed basic instructions. But it could build 1,000 simple devices in the time it took the Nexari system to grow one complex machine. Your solutions are crude and inefficient, called by the Morning Star, said when the testing was finished. But their eyes had shifted to a warm golden color that meant they were intrigued. Yes, they are, Alex admitted. But they work in situations where your elegant solutions would fail completely. A new Nexari entered the workshop. This one was larger and older with crystal skin that had turned deep purple with age. Alex recognized them as one of the senior members of the collective. Human Dr. Carter, the elder said in a voice like distant thunder. Your approach to these challenges has been most unusual. We expected you to attempt copying our methods. Instead, you have created entirely different solutions. We solve problems differently than you do, Alex replied. You build tools that work perfectly under perfect conditions. We build tools that work adequately under any conditions. The elder Nexari was quiet for a long time. Around the workshop, the living walls pulsed with soft light as the collective shared thoughts too complex for individual minds to hold. We have been thinking about efficiency and elegance for so long that we forgot about resilience and adaptability. The elder said finally, your crude devices would continue functioning in environments where our beautiful machines would wither and die. Both approaches have value, Alex suggested. Your living technology is amazing for stable environments, with proper care. Our mechanical technology is better for harsh conditions or situations where elegance is less important than reliability. The elder moved closer to examine the human-built devices. Their crystal fingers traced the metal surfaces with something that looked like wonder. We would like to learn more about your manufacturing techniques, they said. Perhaps there are advantages to building machines instead of growing them. Perhaps crude and reliable is sometimes better than elegant and fragile. We would be happy to share our knowledge, Alex replied. In exchange, perhaps you could teach us about your living crystals. There might be ways to combine our approaches. The elder's eyes shifted to bright white, which Alex had learned meant excitement and joy. Yes, they said. We have much to learn from each other. As Alex and his team prepared to leave the Nexari homeworld, they carried with them samples of living, crystal and detailed instructions for growing basic organic machines. In return, they left behind plans for simple mechanical devices and manufacturing systems that could work anywhere. The technology trial had been passed, but more importantly, both species had discovered that there was more than one way to solve problems. Sometimes the best answer was not the most elegant one. Sometimes crude and reliable was exactly what the situation required. The humans had shown the galaxy that advanced technology was not always better technology. Sometimes what mattered most was building things that worked, no matter what went wrong. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez stood at the edge of the combat arena and studied her opponent. War leader Gorthik of the Kethmori looked like something from humanity's worst nightmares. He stood 3 meters tall, with natural armor plating that covered his reptilian hide like overlapping shields. His 4 arms ended in claws that could slice through steel, and his massive head held teeth designed for tearing apart large prey. The arena itself was a perfect circle of sand, surrounded by energy barriers that would keep the fight contained. Thousands of spectators filled the seats that rose up around the fighting ground. Most of them had come to watch the human representative get destroyed by the galaxy's greatest warrior. Maria had spent weeks preparing for this moment. She had studied every recording of Kethmori combat that human intelligence could find. She had trained with weapons similar to the ones she would use in the arena. She had learned everything she could about her opponent's fighting style and cultural expectations. What she had discovered was that the Kethmori were perfect warriors in every traditional sense. They were stronger and faster than almost any other species. Their natural armor could stop most weapons. Their reflexes were so quick that they could dodge attacks that other beings could not even see coming. For over 3,000 years, no Kethmori warrior had ever lost a formal duel, but Maria had also learned something else. The Kethmori fought according to ancient codes of honor that turned combat into a form of art. They believed that victory without style was meaningless. They would rather lose beautifully than win ugly. Human warrior, Gorthik rumbled in a voice like stones grinding together. I am honored to face a representative of your species in formal combat. Your people have a reputation for persistence. But today you will learn the difference between determination and skill. Maria bowed respectfully. I am honored to face you, war leader. Your people's combat abilities are legendary throughout the galaxy. The weapons for this duel were provided by the arena officials. Each fighter received identical equipment, a sword, a shield, and light armor that would protect against serious injury while still allowing for meaningful combat. The rules were simple: victory by submission, incapacitation, or death dot. As the combatants took their positions, Maria noticed something important. Gorthak held his weapons in the traditional Kethmori style with perfect form and balance. His stance was textbook perfect according to their ancient manuals. His movements flowed like water as he warmed up for the fight. The signal to begin came as a low horn blast that echoed through the arena. Gorthik immediately launched into an attack pattern that Maria recognized from her studies. It was called the Storm of Blades, and it was designed to overwhelm opponents with a series of lightning-fast strikes from multiple angles. Maria did not try to match his elegant technique. Instead, she did something that no honorable Kethmori warrior would ever consider. She threw sand in his eyes and rolled sideways out of his attack pattern. The crowd gasped in surprise. Gorthik stumbled slightly as the grit interfered with his vision, but recovered quickly. His combat training had prepared him for many things, but not for an opponent who would use the environment as a weapon. Clever, he admitted as he wiped sand from his eyes. But tricks will not save you for long. He launched into another attack pattern, this one called the Mountain Avalanche. It involved using his superior size and strength to drive his opponent backward until they had no room to maneuver. Against most enemies, it was devastatingly effective, but Maria had studied this technique too. Instead of trying to block his powerful strikes, she let them push her backward while she looked for openings. When Gorthek committed to a particularly strong overhead swing, she stepped inside his reach and struck at the joint, where his arm met his shoulder. The blow would not have seriously injured the massive warrior, but it hit a nerve cluster that caused his arm to go numb for several seconds. It was a target that Kethmori armor did not protect because their own combat styles never aimed for such locations. Gorthek stepped back and flexed his arm until feeling returned to it. His eyes now held a new kind of respect as he studied his human opponent. "You fight strangely?" he observed. "Where did you learn to target nerve points?" "Human martial arts," Maria replied. "We develop techniques for fighting opponents who are bigger and stronger than we are." The war leader nodded slowly. "Interesting. Most species try to match strength with strength. You use technique to overcome physical disadvantages." "We use whatever works," Maria corrected. "Honor is nice, but survival is better." They circled each other carefully now. Gorthek had realized that this would not be the simple demonstration of superiority he had expected. His opponent was teaching him things about combat that 3,000 years of Kethmori tradition had not covered. The next exchange lasted longer. Gorthek used a technique called the flowing river that involved smooth, continuous attacks designed to find gaps in an opponent's defense. Maria countered with something she had learned from human boxing. She covered up and waited for him to make a mistake. When the mistake came, it was small. Gorthek's fourth arm dropped slightly as he prepared for a complex spinning attack. Maria saw the opening and took it. She grabbed his wrist and used his own momentum to throw him off balance. As the massive warrior stumbled, she swept his legs and sent him crashing to the arena floor. Before he could recover, Maria had her sword point at his throat. The crowd fell completely silent. "Do you yield?" she asked quietly. Gorthek looked up at her with all four of his eyes. For a moment, Maria thought he might refuse to surrender. Then slowly he nodded. "I yield," he said. "The victory is yours, human warrior." Maria stepped back and helped the war leader to his feet. The crowd erupted in confused noise as they tried to understand what they had just witnessed. Many of them had never seen a Kethmori warrior lose before. "How?" Gorthek asked as they walked toward the edge of the arena. "I am stronger and faster than you. My weapons training began before you were born." "How did you defeat me?" Maria considered her answer carefully. "You fought like a warrior trying to demonstrate your skill. I fought like a soldier trying to win a battle. You used techniques that were beautiful and traditional. I used techniques that were effective and practical." "Is there no honor in human combat?" the war leader asked. "There is honor in protecting your people and completing your mission," Maria replied. "Everything else is decoration." Gorthek was quiet for several minutes as they left the arena together. Finally, he spoke again. "I have been fighting for over 200 years. I have won every formal duel I have ever fought. But today I learned that there is a difference between fighting and winning." "Your techniques are impressive," Maria said honestly. "In a contest of pure skill, you would defeat me easily. But this was not a contest of skill. This was a test of who could adapt their methods to overcome their opponent." "Adaptation," the war leader repeated the word slowly. "This is something my people do not emphasize in our training. We perfect ancient techniques, but we do not often develop new ones. Maybe that is something worth changing." Maria suggested that the next day, Gorthek visited Maria at her quarters. He brought with him several other Kethmori warriors, including some of the youngest and most promising fighters from their training academies. "We would like to learn about human combat methods," he said. "Not to replace our traditions, but to add new tools to our arsenal. Would you be willing to teach us? Maria smiled. I would be honored to share what I know, but I would also like to learn from you. Your techniques are incredibly refined and efficient. There are things my people could gain from studying your methods. A mutual exchange of knowledge. Gorthuk nodded approvingly. This seems fair. Over the next several days, Maria taught the Kethmori warriors about practical fighting techniques. She showed them how to use the environment as a weapon and how to target weak points in armored opponents. She demonstrated grappling techniques that could neutralize larger enemies and taught them about fighting psychology. In return, the Kethmori taught her about weapon forms that had been perfected over millennia. They showed her how to move with perfect balance and how to chain attacks together in devastating combinations. They shared the mental disciplines that allowed them to remain calm and focused even in the most chaotic battles. When it came time for Maria to leave the Kethmori homeworld, she carried with her detailed manuals of their fighting techniques and promises of future training exchanges. The warriors who had initially come to watch her be defeated now spoke of her with the same respect they showed their own war leaders. You have changed how we think about combat, Gorthuk told her at the departure ceremony. We always believed that there was one perfect way to fight. Now we understand that there are many effective ways, and the best warriors learn from all of them. The same is true for humans, Maria replied. We thought we understood fighting, but your people have shown us techniques we never imagined. Both. Our species will be stronger for sharing this knowledge. As her transport lifted off from the Kethmori homeworld, Maria reflected on what had been accomplished. The combat trial had been passed, but more importantly, 2 warrior cultures had learned from each other. Commander Ben Taylor stood at the observation window of his transport ship and watched Deathworld Sigma-7 grow larger on the screen ahead. The planet looked like a ball of swirling storms with patches of sickly green and brown showing through the cloud cover. Lightning flashed constantly across its surface, and the readings from his ship's sensors made his crew nervous. Radiation levels are 3 times higher than anything we have encountered before, reported Lieutenant Carol Hayes from the navigation station. The magnetic field fluctuates wildly. The weather patterns change every few hours. I am reading temperature. Swings of over 100 degrees between day and night. Ben nodded calmly. He had expected this. Sigma-7 had been chosen specifically because it was the kind of world that killed exploration teams from other species. 12 different races had tried to establish outposts here over the past century. None had lasted more than a few weeks. What? About the life forms, he asked. The scans show creatures that should not be able to exist, replied Dr. Karen White from the science station. Predators with natural radiation shielding. Plants that thrive in toxic soil. Insects that seem to hunt in coordinated swarms. Everything on this planet has evolved specifically to kill visitors. Ben's team consisted of only 12 specialists. Other species had sent hundreds of colonists with advanced technology and massive supply ships. The humans had arrived in a single small vessel with basic equipment and 30 days' worth of food and water. Sir, said Sergeant Roy Davis from the tactical station, the Galactic Council observers are asking when we plan to begin establishing our permanent base. Tell them we will start as soon as we understand what we are dealing with, Ben replied. No point in building something that will be destroyed by the first storm. The human landing craft descended through the violent atmosphere of Sigma-7. Lightning struck the ship's hull twice during the descent, but the simple metal construction absorbed the electrical discharge without damage. More advanced ships from other species had been destroyed by similar strikes because their delicate electronics could not handle the power surges. The landing site was a rocky plateau that seemed relatively stable. The ground was covered with a thin layer of soil that sensors indicated was mildly poisonous but not immediately lethal. Strange plants grew in patches across the landscape. They looked like metal sculptures with sharp edges and leaves that reflected light like mirrors. Atmosphere is breathable but toxic, Dr. White reported as the team prepared to leave their ship. The oxygen content is good, but there are trace amounts of compounds that will cause lung damage over time. We can work outside for short periods, but we will need to limit our exposure. Ben led his team out onto the surface of the planet. The gravity was slightly higher than Earth normal, and the air tasted like metal and electricity. In the distance, they could see mountains that glowed, with their own light and valleys filled with mist that moved against the wind. First priority is shelter, Ben announced, but not the kind you might expect. Instead of trying to build a permanent structure, the humans constructed something that looked more like a camping setup. They used lightweight materials to create shelters that could be taken down and moved quickly. Everything was designed to be portable and expendable. "Sir," asked Private Steve Chun, "shouldn't we be building something more substantial? The other species that came here built bases with thick walls and heavy foundations." "And where are those bases now?" Ben replied. "The planet destroyed them all. We are not going to fight this world. We are going to learn how to live with it." Over the next 3 days, the team studied the patterns of Sigma-7. They discovered that the planet operated on a 7-day cycle of environmental changes. The first day brought electrical storms that could kill anything metallic left in the open. The second day featured acid rain that dissolved most building materials. The third day had temperatures hot enough to melt lead, followed by the fourth day with cold that could freeze carbon dioxide. "The native life forms have adapted to this cycle," Dr. White explained during their evening briefing. "They have different survival strategies for each phase. Some burrow underground during the dangerous periods. Others migrate to safer areas. A few species actually go dormant and wait for conditions to improve. Then that is what we will do," Ben decided. "We will adapt our behavior to match the planet's rhythm instead of trying to impose our own patterns on it." On the fifth day massive, predators emerged from underground layers. They looked like crosses between spiders and tanks, with armor plating that could deflect most weapons. Previous exploration teams had tried to fight these creatures and been overwhelmed by their numbers and ferocity. The humans did something different. They studied the predators' behavior and discovered that the creatures were following predictable hunting patterns. Instead of fighting them, the team simply avoided the areas where the predators were active and waited for them to return to their lairs. "This is incredible," radioed one of the Galactic Council observers from orbit. "You are surviving conditions that destroyed much larger and better equipped expeditions." "We are not trying to conquer this planet," Ben replied. "We are trying to understand it. Once you know how something works, you can find ways to work with it instead of against it." By the end of the first week, the human team had mapped the major environmental hazards and learned to predict when and where they would occur. They had established a routine that allowed them to work productively during safe periods and take shelter during dangerous ones. The second week brought new challenges. Swarms of flying insects attacked anything that moved during certain hours of the day. Toxic gases emerged from underground vents without warning. Earthquakes struck with devastating force, but only in specific locations. Each new hazard was studied and cataloged. The humans learned that the insects followed magnetic field lines and could be avoided by staying away from certain areas. The toxic gases always emerged from the same vents, so those locations were simply marked as off-limits. The earthquakes happened along predictable fault lines that could be mapped and avoided. "You are turning survival into a science," observed Dr. White as she updated their environmental database. "Everything is a science if you study it carefully enough," Ben replied. "This planet seems chaotic, but it actually follows very predictable patterns. Once you understand the patterns, you can work around them." By the third week, the humans had not only survived, but had begun to thrive. They had established multiple mobile camps that could be moved quickly when conditions changed. They had learned to harvest edible plants during safe periods and store them for times when foraging was impossible. They had even figured out how to use the planet's electrical storms to charge their equipment. "Impossible," muttered the lead council observer as he watched the daily reports. Every other species that attempted this challenge focused on building defenses against the planet's hazards. The humans have learned to use those same hazards to their advantage. The final week of the trial brought the worst conditions yet. All of the planet's environmental dangers seemed to activate at once. Storms raged while predators roamed, and toxic gases filled the air. Previous expeditions had been wiped out during similar periods. The humans simply adapted their tactics again. They moved their camps to underground caves during the storms. They used the predator's own territorial behavior to keep different species fighting each other instead of hunting the human team. They wore breathing gear during gas releases and timed their movements to avoid the worst exposures. When the 30-day trial period ended, Commander, Taylor's team had not only survived, but had established a functioning outpost with sustainable food production and effective defenses against all known hazards. More importantly, they had suffered 0 casualties and were actually in better health than when they had arrived. "How is this possible?" demanded the Xanthari observer during the final debriefing. 12 different species with far superior technology, and much larger numbers have failed where you succeeded. Ben looked up from the report he was writing. "They tried to fight the planet. We tried to understand it. Fighting something you do not understand is a good way to get killed. Understanding something dangerous is the first step toward surviving it." "But your methods are so primitive," protested the Mokari representative. "You used simple tools and basic techniques. You built temporary structures instead of permanent ones. You adapted your behavior instead of modifying the environment." "Yes," Ben agreed. "And that is exactly why we succeeded. This planet destroys anything that tries to impose order on it. But it tolerates visitors who respect its natural patterns and work within its systems." The final council meeting was held via communication link while the human team prepared to establish a permanent research station on Sigma 7. Representatives from all the major galactic species listened as the observers presented their findings. The humans succeeded where others failed, not through superior strength or technology, the lead observer reported. They succeeded through superior adaptability and willingness to change their methods based on new information. "Most disturbing," added another observer, "is their approach to problems that seem impossible. Where other species see insurmountable obstacles, the humans see puzzles to be solved."